Hey all, Taves here, back playing some more Planet Zoo and working on a new thing today. So we have finished the dome. I'm yet to upload it to the workshop, but it will be done very soon. This is an elephant habitat suggested by one of my Discord community members, Diamond Girl 13. So thank you very much for suggesting. So we are working on an African elephant habitat today. So these are going to be fairly short. These are going to be basically, if you didn't catch my last live stream, I think I mentioned these are just going to be kind of one-off habitat buildings or creations, and just kind of looking for inspiration really as to what I want to do next, what my style wants to be. So yeah, not necessarily things that are going to end up being a full zoo, but they may well in the end. Hopefully they'll get these uploaded to the workshop as well, so that you guys can use them if you want. So we're starting off with a. Obviously, I'd worked on the South America stuff in the dome, so I was really keen to kind of use elephants and get into the African pack specifically, because I hadn't really worked on that very much. So we're just kind of creating them, starting off here with a house. I wanted to go for something sort of fairly kind of, to be honest, fairly boxy, because I've been using the dome and using sort of spherical shapes a lot, so that's not necessarily what you see a lot in zoos. You know, architecture is often quite boxy, so I thought I'd go with something square and just see how you can kind of decorate it and make it look more interesting. So we started off with this kind of glass roof that I'm then added these canvas sort of curtains or drapes into to give the elephants eventually some shade in there, and then we just add in some detailing, so a bit of bunting just to kind of make it convincing. Then we're off to copy it round. So there's going to be there's going to be quite a few little jumps in this, and I'm actually doing cinematics at the end of this video rather than what I usually do with the tour. So that's quite a nice change for me. So copying it round, filling in this corner. Obviously I had to tidy up the corners and make the corners a bit different because they have that overlap that we had. I didn't put a curtain in this, I just felt it was nice to have a bit of light. I was trying to find a pillar actually that worked on the corners of this building, and everything I found was quite big. The brick pillars are either too thin or too large for what I'm using, so ended up kind of making my own custom ones here out of just some art shapes and this trim. I use this trim piece a lot actually, just black solid trim piece, and it's just got quite a good flat matte texture to it. So working on the flat part of the ceiling now, some of that corrugated metal, and then putting a skylight in. So pretty simple sort of stuff. But the intention of these really is, as well as kind of trying to find new inspiration and new ideas, is just to, the idea was to make it simpler, and really enjoy the detail, and to find a kind of a nice balance between the heavy details doing in the last stuff and something a bit more practical. So we're just adding in, I sort of talked through that section, but those were kind of bump bars. So I have seen those quite a lot in zoos, especially in elephant habitats, where they don't want the elephants or the large animals to kind of bump the walls. They put these almost like buffers up, quite often just made out of logs and a bit of reinforcing. So we've given them a door now. This ended up being 2 habitats. I think I've talked about this a few times, but it's very rare that you actually see an animal in a zoo where there's only one of its kind or only one singular habitat for that animal. It's quite often that you'll see a pair of elephants in one habitat and then another pair of elephants in another habitat. It's quite unusual that they'd have just a single pair of one type of animal. So putting in a bit of this is supposed to be like a drainage grill here. I've done this before and a couple of times. It's just a gutter and then lots of this metal fencing to kind of create the grid effect. Then we're opening another entrance here. So just to kind of wanted to break off of the box. So a way to do that quite often that's quite nice is to completely change your materials. You'll see that I've kind of used similar materials. So the very foot of the wall is the same, but the rest of the material in this kind of entranceway is totally different, and the roof is totally different. So this is actually something I've done before. I did on the reptile house a while ago, but using these windows. Windows have got a really cool texture, kind of shiny, almost black. So you'll see it there. It's kind of like a shiny black texture. That's really cool. It almost looks like a plastic, I think, like a plastic backing. So we've created this little entranceway, and again, as I said, this was just to kind of break the shape off a bit, but provide a way for the keepers to get into the habitat. What I was going for in this habitat, actually, I'm not sure you'll see this very much, but there is a thing in zoos at the moment, or from what I've seen and research that I've done, is that it's quite common that, especially in the case of larger animals like elephants, that keepers don't want to be in. You know, it's a bit of a kind of a conservation thing, and I think a kind of wellness of the animal thing, that the keepers rarely now go in the habitat, will actually be in the habitat with the elephant. So what they'll do is they'll feed them through the bars, and they'll make sure that there's always bars between them and the elephant. That, the theory, I think, is that kind of makes the animal less stressed, but also doesn't run the risk of there ever being a reason why that animal would get distressed and do damage to a keeper. So this is actually I lifted this straight from the Bronx Zoo. I've seen this in video footage from the Bronx Zoo. They have these kind of large, fairly kind of glamorous steel columns with chains between, and as I said, they feed the animals through them. And those same steel columns I've used to create a division within the actual elephant house itself. So those two habitats come together in this building, but they're not actually kind of joined into one habitat. So it actually weirdly ends up being that there are 3 habitat gates, because you're forced in the game, obviously, to allow the keepers to get into the habitats. And what would actually happen in reality is that the keepers would, if they were cleaning the habitat, they'd bring the elephant or the animal into their enclosure, into their elephant house, close the doors, make sure the elephant is securely locked away in there, and then clean behind them, and then vice versa, let the elephant out into the yard or into its kind of larger area, and then lock the interior space and then clean that. So we're trying to kind of infer that as much as we can. So there's a few of these places where there's gates like this. This is actually supposed to be an exit gate, so the game doesn't particularly cater very well for this, but you have to be able to, obviously, something as large as an elephant, you can't bring it through one of the habitat gates. So what this is sort of creating is a means for which, if the elephant had to be removed from the habitat for whatever reason, they'd have a way of doing it. So this is just kind of big double gate made out of some girders. This is probably the most complicated bit, but the actual kind of exterior space, I wanted to kind of feel like it was sunken down into the ground. Obviously, elephants are enormous animals, but getting the ability for guests to be on kind of eye level or on sort of reasonably eye level was just an idea that I thought would be quite cool. So I've created, this looks a bit odd, but I'm creating these wall structures, and copying them round to make these spheres, and then to make it kind of an interesting habitat space for the animals. You'll see in a second I kind of overlap these circles to create these sort of concentric circle thing, then delete all the space within inside. So what I don't need, I'm then removing, and you'll see in a second as it does a bit of a jump forwards, is that I've then sunk that whole thing down, brought the terrain up behind it so you can sort of see it now, and I've put water in and things like that in a little moat. So they're never actually at eye level, but it feels more like for a guess that they're on a kind of a same level as the elephants are. And so then it's just a lot of, you know, the normal sort of thing, rock work. Coming to the end of the speed build, guys. So very much appreciate you watching. Thank you very much, and appreciate everybody that subscribed and liked. And enjoy the cinematics. And I shall see you guys next time. Take it easy.